The day of the court hearing, my wife Serena filed for divorce. She accused me of being a failure as a father and a husband. She demanded not only all our assets, but also sole custody of our daughter. Yet right in the middle of the courtroom, a small voice changed everything. It was Chloe, our 7-year-old daughter, who looked up at the judge and asked, "Your Honor, may I show you something my daddy doesn't know about?" The judge nodded. Chloe stepped forward, lifted her old tablet, and pressed play. As the video started, everyone froze in absolute silence. Welcome to Bradley's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. That morning had begun like so many others in our house on Willow Creek Lane, a house that technically belonged to Serena, but whose soul I had shaped with my own hands over the past 7 years. I, Elias Vance, dressed simply, had been standing in the kitchen since dawn. The scent of warm breakfast mingled with the delicate aroma of lavender detergent from the small laundry room, where the washing machine endlessly spun its cycles. I moved quickly, yet almost silently. Over the years, I had learned to navigate my own home like a shadow, so as not to disturb my wife Serena's supposed peace. This silence wasn't the peace one desires. It was the frosty stillness of a perfectly polished museum. I still clearly remember the day I gave up my career as an architect for this life. A life I then saw as a conscious act of love and care. "Our daughter needs a stable base, Elias," Serena had said, her voice as clear and compelling as ever, just as she was receiving her first big promotion. "Your degree was a dream, but this is reality. You can manage the home. You're so good at these things." My designs, my sketches, which I had once drawn with the passion of an artist, ended up in a dusty box in the basement. A small, sharp ache has gnawed at my chest constantly since then, a sense of loss that I had forbidden myself from acknowledging. I had buried it beneath perfectly folded laundry and Chloe's loving laughter. Punctually at 6 o'clock, she came down from the second floor. She wore an impeccable, custom-tailored business suit, the fabric of which cost thousands of dollars, and carried an expensive designer bag that was updated every year. She was the embodiment of success, aloof, glistening, and cold. The moment she appeared, I placed a steaming cup of black coffee, steeped for exactly 10 seconds, and a perfectly plated breakfast in front of her. Scrambled eggs with chives, not too soft, not too firm. It was more of a required duty than an act of affection, more out of habit than gratitude. Serena sat down and took the cup without even glancing at me. Her gaze passed right over me, as if I were a superfluous piece of furniture. "The coffee is a little bitter today," she remarked dryly, her eyes glued to her phone screen. A tiny crinkle of her lips told me I was, once again, not good enough. "I'm sorry, honey. I thought I measured it right this time," I replied softly, my voice trembling slightly with the exhaustion of striving day after day to meet her impossibly high standards. She didn't say anything else. She just pushed the plate slightly aside, ate a few bites, and continued scrolling on her phone. I stood at the edge of the table like an employee, waiting for further instructions. None came. Silence so thick and cold hung between us that it seemed to stifle even the steam from the coffee. It was the silence that follows a war, where the weapons have been laid down, but the souls are not yet healed. I couldn't even recall the last time we'd laughed together over breakfast. Maybe that was 2 or 3 years ago, when her meetings and business trips grew longer, and the sound of honest laughter in that house was replaced by the click of the cabinet door closing. A gnawing feeling of loneliness overcame me, a feeling as familiar as the smell of the detergent. I wasn't just her husband. I was her manager, her chef, her chauffeur, her butler. I was everything but a partner. "Is Chloe awake yet?" Serena asked, without taking her eyes off the phone. Her question sounded like a business necessity. "Yes, she's in the shower. She'll be down for breakfast shortly," I answered. Indeed, minutes later, small, hurried steps could be heard on the stairs, the only honest sounds in our house. Chloe, our 7-year-old daughter, rushed in, wearing her immaculate private academy uniform. Her radiant smile, a gift from God, stood in stark contrast to the leaden atmosphere we had cultivated. "Good morning, Mommy and Daddy," she chirped, giving Serena a quick kiss on the cheek, and then me. My wife finally put her phone down and forced a smile for the public that was distinctly different from the one she gave me. "Good morning, Princess. Eat all your breakfast. Mommy is driving you to school today." "Wow, I get to ride with Mommy," Chloe exclaimed. I felt a small flicker of relief. At least in front of the child, Serena made an effort to appear loving. This brief breakfast was the only moment we had as a family, a fragile bridge over the deep chasm separating us. As Chloe finished eating, Serena instantly stood up, grabbed her keys and bag, gave the child a quick kiss, and hurried toward the door. As almost always, she walked past me without seeing me, without acknowledging me. No thank you, no goodbye, not even a look of farewell. Only the slam of the door and the sound of the car driving away left the house in an immense, oppressive silence that now seemed doubly loud. The rest of the morning, I devoted myself to the routine that defined my days and drained my soul, clearing the table, washing the dishes, continuing the laundry, tidying the rooms. I did everything with almost obsessive efficiency. I insisted on keeping the house perfect, convinced that maybe Serena would come back to me if everything was flawless, the food delicious, and I patient and quiet enough. It was a desperate, silent plea for recognition. But that Serena, the loving young woman I had married, seemed to have vanished forever, replaced by a cold, calculating businesswoman whose only interest was the next promotion. At noon, I picked Chloe up from school, my favorite, my life-saving moment of the day. I loved listening to her tell me everything about her friends, art class, or the contents of her lunchbox, with her inexhaustible, childlike energy. "Daddy, I got 5 golden stars today," she said, skipping beside me. "The teacher said I answered everything right." "My girl is a genius," I replied proudly, giving her nose a loving pinch. In these moments, I wasn't the failed husband, but simply Chloe's daddy, the best daddy in the world, the only person who still looked at me with untainted love. A few weeks before this fateful day, I had run into Trevor Sterling, an old college friend who was now a famous architect. I had seen him at a cafe downtown. He came straight toward me. "Elias, my God, you look like you've seen a ghost," Trevor had said, holding me in a firm hug that almost brought me to tears. "Trevor," I whispered, I'm just surprised. What are you doing here?" "I'm opening a new studio." "And you?" "What are you doing?" "I thought you were about to change the skyline." I smiled sadly. "I changed. I'm a stay-at-home dad." Trevor measured me with a look that instantly grasped my story. "You were the most talented of us all, Elias. You have gold in your hands, not just for building houses, but for cooking. I remember that from way back." He handed me his business card. "Listen, my friend, I have a small project, a gala opening in a few weeks. The catering is undecided. You cook excellently. Could you make simple but elegant appetizers for 200 guests? Just for fun. To get your hands back in the swing of things. I hesitated. I don't know if Serena has nothing to do with this, Elias, Trevor had said sternly. This is your life. If you love food, do it. Start living again. That encounter was a small crack in the wall of apathy that surrounded me. I allowed myself to see cooking as art, not a chore. I prepared a few small samples for Trevor, secretly in the perfectly organized kitchen, and the feedback was enthusiastic. These secret culinary escapades were my only spark of hope. When Chloe and I arrived home that day, the day the divorce was filed, and I was helping her take off her shoes in the foyer, I heard the sound of a scooter stopping outside. A uniformed courier called my name. "Mr. Elias Vance, a package for you." I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything. No materials for my secret cooking projects. I went to the door and took a thick brown envelope with no return address, only the logo of a law firm I didn't know in the corner. My heart began to beat irregularly and heavily. A premonition, cold and heavy as lead, dropped into my stomach. "Who is it, Daddy?" asked Chloe, who had followed me. "I don't know, Princess. Probably advertising. Go get changed. Then we'll eat," I replied, trying to sound calm. When she had gone to her room, I sat down with the envelope in my hands on the cream-colored, spotless sofa in the living room. My hands were shaking slightly as I opened it. Inside was a stack of documents. I read the first line on the top sheet, and my breath caught. Petition for dissolution of marriage. My world stood still. My ears were ringing. The perfectly tidy house seemed to spin around me. I read again, as if my eyes were deceiving me. Petitioner. Serena. Respondent. Elias. Grounds. The husband has completely failed in the fulfillment of his marital duties. I felt a lump in my stomach, more bitter than the coffee I served Serena every morning. Failed? I had dedicated my entire life to this house. I had given up my career at her request. I took care of Chloe. Every meal, every outing, every piece of homework. I kept everything in order. How could she claim I had failed? When did my sacrifice become a failure in her eyes? I continued reading, and every new line hurt more, one stab after another to my soul. Serena was not only asking for a divorce, she was also demanding sole custody of Chloe, alleging that I was emotionally unstable and unfit to raise my daughter. And the worst part, she wanted to keep all the assets, including the house, since I had not contributed financially, and she had earned everything alone. She was erasing my existence as if I had never been there. I sank onto the cold, hardwood floor. The papers were scattered around me like the debris of my life. It suddenly became clear to me why she had been so cold in recent months. It was all part of a deliberate, cold-blooded plan. I felt an old, long-suppressed resentment stirring in me. I had sacrificed my love. She was now going to complete my destruction. Just then, the door opened. Serena had returned earlier than usual. She looked at me for a moment, sitting on the floor, surrounded by papers. Then she closed the door quietly and stepped leisurely forward. Her face showed neither guilt nor surprise, only a calculated coldness, an almost clinical indifference. "What does this mean, Serena?" I asked, with a broken, hoarse voice. She calmly slipped off her expensive shoes, stepped closer, leaned down slightly to look at the cover of the complaint, and shrugged. The indifference was a weapon, sharper than any word. "It means exactly what you read. I don't want to live with you anymore, Elias. You failed as a husband and as a father." "Failed?" I repeated in disbelief, almost shouting. "I took care of this house and Chloe. I gave up my career. I gave up everything for you all." My inner being trembled. I had traded my soul for her, and she called it a failure. Took care of it? She scoffed. All you do is spend my money and wait around. Chloe needs a better father, someone competent, someone with power, not a failure who can only cook and cry. I'm the only one who can ensure she has a decent life. I stood up, my knees shaking. But the house, our things, Chloe. You can't take her away from me. I began to scream, on the verge of hysteria. I knew I was behaving exactly as she wanted, but I couldn't control it. Serena crouched down a bit to look me in the eye, and I saw a hatred I had never noticed in her before. A cold, pure hatred that shocked me. The truth of my isolation hit me in the face. Yes, I can, she whispered, her voice sounding sweet, but poisonous. And I will. My attorney has already prepared all the evidence. You will be left with nothing, Elias. You will walk out of this house without a single dollar. She stood up, adjusted her suit, and looked toward the stairs to make sure Chloe wasn't listening. I noticed that her blouse smelled not only of her expensive perfume, but also of an intense, woody, masculine scent that I hadn't noticed that morning. Her infidelity was now a physical presence in the room. And prepare yourself for something else, she added with an icy smile. My lawyer says even your own daughter will testify in court about what a bad father you are. I was stunned. Serena didn't just want a divorce. She wanted to destroy me as a person and as a father. The scheming coldness of the plan was overwhelming. That night, I couldn't sleep. She locked herself in the master bedroom as if in a fortress, and I stayed in Chloe's room, sitting on a hard chair next to her bed, watching her sleep. My tears didn't stop, but they were silent. I felt a desperation that paralyzed me to the bone. How could Serena say that Chloe would testify against me? What had they been telling my child? The idea that Chloe could be manipulated choked me. The next morning, she moved around the house as if nothing had happened. She woke Chloe, chose her clothes, and took her to school without exchanging a word with me. When Chloe asked why my eyes were so swollen, Serena answered with total coldness. Daddy isn't feeling very well, Princess. He's a little emotional. He needs rest. As soon as they were gone, I first felt panic. I had to fight. I couldn't give up without trying to keep my daughter. I opened the laptop and searched for divorce lawyers. I soon found that all of them demanded fees, retainers, and paid consultations, and I had nothing. For years, Serena had given me a suitable monthly allowance for the supermarket and Chloe's expenses. There was no room for savings. My only hope was the joint savings account, the family's emergency fund, into which I had paid my small, irregular earnings from previous projects over the years. I took my phone, opened the banking app, and nervously typed the password. When the balance appeared, I felt my legs give way. 0. The account was empty. That couldn't be right. Hundreds of thousands of dollars should have been in there, our life savings. I refreshed the screen several times, pleading that it was an error, but the 0 remained like a dagger stab. I opened the transaction history. Over the past 6 months, Serena had withdrawn enormous sums and transferred them to another account I didn't know. The last transaction, 3 days earlier, had emptied the rest. The depth of her malice was incomprehensible. She had planned everything, systematically destroying my ability to defend myself. She wasn't just leaving. She had left me penniless to fight back. I buried my face in my hands and wept with rage. The anger of the betrayal mixed with the helplessness of my situation. Then I remembered my few valuables, my wedding watch, some cash reserves I thought I had hidden. I checked the drawer where I kept them. It was empty. She had taken those too. Desperate, I thought of Trevor. I called him and told him in broken sentences what had happened. He was stunned. Elias, this is crazy. Come over. We'll figure out a solution. I couldn't go to him. I had to stay close to Chloe. He couldn't help me directly, but he gave me a name. "Look up attorney Miles Harrison," he said. "He has a small office in an older building. He's not expensive, but he's honest. Go tell him everything. Maybe he can help you. He's an old school fighter." With the little cash I found in an old wallet, I took Atini to the address. The office was humble, on the second floor of a building with peeling paint that smelled of damp wood and old files. Attorney Harrison, a middle-aged man with glasses and a calm but sharp demeanor, received me. His office radiated a grounded, no-nonsense professionalism that sharply contrasted with Serena's glittering world. He listened without interrupting, just nodding and taking notes. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "Elias, this is going to be a tough fight," he said. "Your wife prepared everything long in advance. She doesn't just want to divorce you. She wants to crush you. This is a strategy of total annihilation. I know, attorney, but I don't care about the possessions. I only want Chloe. Please help me. I don't have money right now, but I will pay you little by little. I will do whatever it takes," I pleaded. That was my only drive, the love for my daughter. He looked at me for several seconds. He saw my tears, my desperation, but also the resolve in my eyes. "Let's leave the money for later. The most urgent thing is to respond to this complaint immediately. It's already filed. We're working against the clock." He asked me to wait, went out, and came back with a folder full of photocopies. They were the documents filed by Serena's lawyer, attorney Dalton Reed. "Reed is known for being aggressive and using very dirty tactics," Harrison explained. "Let's see what evidence he has." He opened the folder. The first page was a series of photos. The interior of my house. Dirty dishes piled up. The living room was a mess, with toys scattered around, and dirty laundry was overflowing the basket. "This is a joke," I protested, my heart pounding with rage. "Those photos are from when I had the flu. I had a high fever for 3 days. Serena wouldn't help, and the house fell into disarray. She intentionally photographed it instead of bringing me soup." "I know," the attorney replied, "but she wants it to look like you're a lazy slob who doesn't maintain the household. She pulled the images from the only moment that fit her narrative. She's constructing a reality." We flipped to the next pages. Credit card statements in my name, with purchases of luxury watches, expensive clothes, dinners at restaurants I had never set foot in. "This isn't mine. I didn't buy any of this," I said, outraged. My anger turned into cold, burning resentment. "The card was in your name, but she had it?" he asked. "Yes. She said I should use it if I needed it. But in reality, she always kept it in her purse. Sometimes she said her main card was maxed out from business expenses." I felt the ground shifting. Everything had been a perfect ambush, a web she had patiently spun while I was folding T-shirts. Then the attorney paused at a thick report. "And this is the most delicate thing, Elias," he said. "It's an expert witness report, a child psychologist, Dr. Brandon Gates." I took the document. It stated that this professional, Dr. Brandon Gates, had conducted covert observations of my interactions with Chloe. With a coldness that made me shiver, he described me as an emotionally unstable father who projected his problems onto the child and endangered her psychological health. He recommended exclusive custody for Serena. That makes no sense. When were these observations made? "I have never spoken with a psychologist," I stammered. "According to the report, they took place in public places. The park, the mall, the school gate," the lawyer explained. "It's insane. Chloe is always happy with me. This is defamation." "Who is this Dr. Gates?" Harrison checked the cover page. "He is licensed. he has a practice. His records are impeccable. Either he is real and has been bought off, or someone constructed his identity very well, he said. The thought of living under the same roof as the person who had orchestrated my destruction became a silent hell. I was a prisoner in my own house, which had turned into a frozen battlefield. Serena didn't leave the house. She just moved to the guest room to maintain a demonstrative distance. I had to live with my enemy, see her every morning, and pretend normalcy in front of Chloe. A psychological torture. In front of the child, Serena played the perfect mother, with an artificial conviction that disgusted me. Suddenly, she came home early from work. She brought expensive gifts, organized outings, and smiled excessively. One evening, she appeared with a huge, brightly wrapped box. "Look, Chloe, your new tablet," she said, hugging her. "It's much better than the old one. It has a better camera. And I already installed lots of games for you." My daughter's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Mommy." I, who was folding laundry in the living room, felt a lump in my throat. I knew exactly what Serena was doing, buying the child's loyalty. The traitor was playing the benevolent queen. "See, Princess?" Serena added, looking at me mockingly, as she turned on the tablet. "If you live with me, you can get a new toy every week, not just someone who can sweep and cook." My hands froze over the laundry. I wanted to scream, to fight, to expose her, but I couldn't do it in front of Chloe. Any strong reaction would reinforce her claim that I was unstable. So, I swallowed and silently continued folding t-shirts, while her venom filled the room. From then on, the torture was daily. When I prepared dinner, she tasted the food and said in front of Chloe, "Honey, it's a little too salty again. Never mind, tomorrow we'll order something delicious. Daddy just isn't Michelin star level." When I sat down to help Chloe with homework, she pushed herself in between. "Let me do that. Daddy explains everything so confusingly. You'll just get mixed up. His ideas just aren't structured." Gradually, I felt smaller and more invisible in my own home. I began to doubt myself. Did I really cook badly? Did I really explain things poorly to my daughter? Serena knew how to turn my regret and insecurity into a weapon against me. Chloe, caught in the middle, showed signs of confusion and great inner loneliness. She sought my closeness to hug me, but at the same time, she enjoyed her mother's gifts. Sometimes she clung tightly to me, seeking protection, but other times she seemed distant, especially after Serena had whispered something in her ear. One night, unable to sleep, I went into Chloe's room to check on her. I opened the door slowly. She was fast asleep. The room smelled of kids' perfume and the old, familiar scent of her beloved stuffed animal. On the desk lay the new tablet, but as I got closer to cover her up, I saw something strange. Chloe's hand was tightly gripping something hidden under the pillow. It wasn't a stuffed animal. I leaned forward carefully, and my heart skipped a beat. It was her old, cheap tablet. The screen cracked in one corner, the same one I had always told her to be careful with. Why was she still keeping it hidden there when she had a new, shiny one on the desk? I didn't understand. I thought it was just childlike attachment to an old object. I didn't know that this broken tablet held a secret that could change everything. I only felt my daughter's secret affection for something that came from me, and that gave me a little comfort. I returned to my room with a confused mind. The climax came a few days later, amidst an unexpected downpour. That afternoon, I was waiting for Chloe at the school exit. I had promised to bake her favorite chocolate cake. But an hour after school let out, she didn't come out. I called the school, and they told me her mother had picked her up. My stomach dropped. Serena hadn't told me anything. I called her several times, but she didn't answer. 2 hours passed, then 3. Dusk broke. I paced the living room on the verge of madness, my eyes burning. The anxiety for my child was the worst pain. It wasn't until 9 o'clock that evening that I heard the car in the driveway. Chloe came in laughing, with a bag full of souvenirs from Adventureland Park. She looked happy, but also exhausted. Behind her came Serena, with a triumphant smile. "Where were you? Why did you take Chloe without telling me? I was worried sick." I screamed, my voice full of rage and tears. "Mommy took me to Adventureland Park, Daddy. Oh, it was super," Chloe shouted before Serena could answer. Serena looked at me coldly. "So what? I'm her mother. I have the right to take my daughter whenever I want. Besides, you don't do anything here anyway but worry." "You could have at least informed me," I insisted. "Why? So you could ruin our fun with your dramas? You're too sensitive, Elias. That's the problem." That's when I noticed it again. An intense, masculine perfume on Serena's sweater. It smelled of cedarwood and musk, expensive and dominant. It was neither mine nor one I knew. It smelled of betrayal. "Serena, you—" I began. She followed my gaze, realized it, and smiled. She waited until Chloe had rushed to her room with her new toys and then stepped in front of me. She spoke in a poisonous whisper, her eyes flashing with contempt. "Did you really think I would live forever with a boring stay-at-home dad like you? A man who only dusts and cooks? There are real successful men who know how to master life. You are nothing compared to him. Absolutely nothing." "Who is it?" I asked, feeling the air leave my lungs. "That's none of your business. He's a brilliant man, a real professional, a doer, not someone who washes dishes all day." That evening, Chloe came to me. "Daddy, why are you crying?" she asked. I wiped away the tears as best I could. "I'm fine, Princess. I just have a little headache." She looked at me with a mixture of doubt and sadness. Her inner conflict was painfully visible to me. "Are you really sick?" "Mommy says you are sick inside. That's why you are always sad and get angry. She says if I move in with her, you can rest and get healthy." I felt my heart break. Serena had manipulated her thoughts, wrapping her cruelty in a false act of love. I hugged her tightly. "Chloe, listen to me. I'm not sick. I just love you too much. I promise you, I will try not to get angry." But the doubt had already settled in her eyes. The mediation hearing, which took place a few weeks later, was a farce, a performance of Serena's power. We were placed in a small, poorly ventilated room that smelled of old carpet. The mediator tried to find a middle ground. Attorney Harrison, in his worn but neat suit, began, "Serena, Elias is not asking for anything extraordinary. He just wants custody of Chloe, or at least joint custody. As for the assets, that can be negotiated." But Attorney Dalton Reed, sharply dressed and arrogant, immediately interrupted him. "There's nothing to negotiate," he said, slamming the file on the table. "My client's position is clear. Elias is the failure in this marriage. It is proven that he neglected the household and the upbringing. My client demands sole custody for Chloe's well-being." Serena sat next to him as the perfect victim. She clasped her hands together and played the sacrifice. "I only want what's best for my daughter," she said with a trembling voice that sounded so fake. "Even if it hurts to keep her away from her father, it's the best thing for her." I was trembling with rage. The greed beneath that mask of motherhood was sickening. "If you insist, we will go to trial," Reed added. And all the evidence we have will make him look ridiculous. The photos, the bank statements, the expert witness report. My client is being generous by offering him to leave the house without a counterclaim, but without the child. The mediation failed. As we left, Attorney Harrison put his hand on my shoulder. Hold firm, Elias. They are playing the game of destruction. We have to believe in the truth. The first day of trial arrived. I felt a weight in my stomach. Harrison had repeatedly hammered into me. No matter what happens, keep your calm. Don't give them any ammunition to portray you as unstable. The courtroom felt intimidating with its dark wood paneling and the high-seated judge. Serena on the other side seemed calm and self-assured, immaculate in her new suit. Next to her, Attorney Reed moved with confidence. The hearing began. Reed spoke first with a confident voice, a voice accustomed to dominance. He presented the photos of the alleged chaos in the house, the bank statements, his narrative of a useless husband living off the efforts of a successful professional. While my client, Serena Vance, works grueling hours to support her family, he declaimed, Mr. Elias Vance spends the money and neglects his daughter. He has abandoned his role as a partner and father and has become a mere burden. I wanted to scream that it was a lie, that she had taken the photos when I was sick, that she used the cards, that everything was a trap. But Attorney Harrison squeezed my arm under the table. I bit my tongue and endured it. Harrison tried to refute this, explaining the context of the photos and Serena's absolute control over the money. But his words sounded weak against such, albeit manipulated, evidence. The judge took notes without changing his expression. Then came the moment of the expert witness. The petitioner calls Dr. Brandon Gates, child psychologist, Reed announced. The door opened, and a tall man in an immaculate suit, very well groomed, carrying a leather briefcase, entered. He didn't look like a criminal. He was the image of a successful, trustworthy professional. He sat down, swore to tell the truth, and began to speak in a calm, confident tone that made his lies even more convincing. Yes, Your Honor, he said. I have conducted observations of Mr. Elias Vance and his daughter over the past 3 months. My report is based on rigorous scientific criteria. There was a certainty in his gaze that disquieted me. And what did you find? Reed asked. My conclusions are worrisome. I observe a marked emotional instability in Mr. Vance. He overreacts, projects his frustrations onto the child, and creates a tense atmosphere that hinders Chloe's psychological development. He began to mention episodes, subtly twisting reality with malice. In a shopping mall, I saw him abruptly pull the child away and yell at her in front of other people, causing her to cry. This demonstrates poor emotional regulation and potential emotional abuse. I recognized the scene. Chloe had almost stepped onto the escalator going the wrong way, and I had pulled her back in fright. It wasn't anger, it was sheer terror. Inside, I was screaming. It's fear, not hate. In a park, Mr. Vance seemed more focused on his phone than on the child. When Chloe fell, he reacted slowly, and then made a drama out of it, which amplified the child's trauma, he continued. I remembered exactly that I was texting Serena the shopping list and ran over immediately when Chloe tripped. But coming from this man's mouth, everything sounded different, twisted, and malevolent. I conclude that Mr. Vance lacks the necessary stability for a healthy upbringing. For Chloe's psychological well-being, I recommend sole custody for the mother, he concluded. A heavy, oppressive silence filled the room. I felt tears burning in my eyes. The injustice was overwhelming. It's a lie, I whispered to Harrison. And also the cologne. Suddenly it hit me. It was the same cedarwood and musk scent I had smelled on Serena's clothes. My heart hammered against my chest. Intrigue, lies, and betrayal merged into a single, bitter certainty. "I think it's him," I added, icy cold. "Serena's lover? They're using him." "Calm down," the lawyer muttered. "If you explode, you'll only confirm what he says." Harrison stood up for the cross-examination. "Doctor, can you truly make such a serious diagnosis based solely on observations from a distance, without a single personal consultation with the child or the father?" "Natural observation is one of the most reliable methods," Gates replied with a half smirk. "The subject does not pretend because they don't know they are being observed. You were hired and paid by Ms. Serena Vance, correct?" "I was paid for my services, not my conclusions. These are objective and data-driven," Gates answered cleverly. Harrison hit a wall. The expert witness had perfectly secured his testimony. The judge recessed the session. I left the room completely destroyed. In the hallway, I saw Serena and Gates exchanging an overly intimate, barely concealed glance, a mixture of greed and complicity. I was certain they were more than just client and professional. I felt the cold wind of vengeance rising within me, an emotion I had never known before. At the next hearing, it was my turn to testify. I took the stand, swore to tell the truth, and Attorney Harrison guided me with gentle questions. I spoke about my life as a stay-at-home dad, how I had given up my work to care for Chloe, about my routine from dawn until night. "Regarding the photos," he asked, "can you explain the context to the court?" "Yes," I answered. "Those photos were taken by Serena when I had a high fever. I was sick for 3 days and could barely get out of bed. I asked her for help with the house, but she refused. Everything piled up. I didn't have the strength to clean up, and instead of helping, she took photos. It was a calculated act of defamation." Then I explained about the credit cards, how she managed them, how I knew nothing about the withdrawals. Some people in the audience murmured sympathetically. The judge remained expressionless. When Attorney Dalton Reed's turn came, he approached the stand with a poisonous smile. "So, Mr. Elias Vance," he began, "are you suggesting that your wife, the woman who finances you, planned a movie-like conspiracy just to ruin you and leave you behind in this beautiful house?" "I didn't say that. I told you what happened," I replied. "But that's how it sounds. She works, and you are the perfect victim. Nothing is your fault." "Are you perfect?" he mocked. "No, I'm not perfect. But I'm not a failure either. I gave Chloe my time and my love. You claim you were sick when the photos were taken. Do you have a medical report to prove it?" he insisted. "I wasn't hospitalized. I took medication at home. I take care of myself. So there is no proof. Your word against very clear pictures. And regarding the cards, did you ever notify the bank or claim misuse?" "No," I admitted. "I trusted my wife. I thought we were a team." "Exactly," he concluded. "A blind trust that you now want to turn into an excuse." He returned to his table, holding up an enlarged photograph. When I saw it, my blood ran cold. It was me, weeks earlier, in our bedroom, disheveled, weeping, screaming, out of control. "Explain this picture to us, Mr. Vance," he said triumphantly. "Isn't this the perfect evidence of what Dr. Gates described? An unstable, hysterical man. Is that the face of a capable father? Describe your emotional instability to the court at that moment." I started to tremble. That night, Serena arrived drunk, I managed to say. She told me I was a parasite, a failure, that Chloe would be better off without me. She insulted me for hours until I exploded. I was desperate. "So you admit you yelled?" Lost control and behaved hysterically? Reed interrupted. Exactly what the expert witness describes. No, I shouted, standing up. She intentionally provoked me and secretly recorded me. She is a... Silence, the judge thundered, banging his gavel. Calm yourself, or I will have you removed from the room. I sank onto the seat, sobbing, aware that I had done exactly what they wanted, portrayed myself as an uncontrolled man. The judge slowly shook his head. The defeat was complete. That session ended in an almost total defeat. As we left, I could barely say to Attorney Harrison, "It's over, Mr. Harrison. I've already lost everything." The night was endless. I knew the verdict would be read the next morning. I went through an hour of the deepest despair in the silence of the guest bathroom. I thought about running away, leaving everything behind, disappearing into anonymity. But the idea of abandoning Chloe was worse than death. My decision to be reborn was made that night of anguish. I would never give up Chloe. I went to Chloe's room. She was sleeping peacefully. Serena wasn't there. She was probably celebrating her victory with Gates. I sat on the edge of the bed and stroked my daughter's hair, crying in silence. At some point, Chloe opened her eyes. "Daddy," she murmured. "Shh, go back to sleep, princess," I whispered, hugging her tightly. "No matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that I will always love you with all my heart. Your love is my salvation." She wrapped her little arms around my neck. "I love you too, Daddy." As I stood up, I saw it again, the old tablet peeking out from under the pillow. Chloe held onto it even in her sleep, like a lucky charm. I didn't have the strength to ask her anything. I kissed her forehead and left, ready to face what I believed was the end of my life as a father. On the morning of the verdict, the room felt even colder. I sat with stiff shoulders and swollen eyes from lack of sleep. Next to me, Attorney Harrison wore a somber expression. On the other side, Serena looked radiant in a new suit, occasionally leaning over to Reed to whisper something with a half smile. In the gallery, I saw Dr. Gates sitting with calculated elegance, his eyes twinkling with expected triumph. The judge entered, and everyone stood. "Today is the reading of the verdict," he said after sitting down. "But first, the parties present their closing arguments." Attorney Dalton Reed spoke first, summarizing his alleged victory. The photos, the accounts, the psychologist's report. He painted Serena as a sacrificing mother, and me as a burden. The child must live in a stable environment, not with a man suffering from emotional instability, he concluded triumphantly. Then, it was Attorney Harrison's turn. "Your Honor," he began, his voice calm but penetrating, "what we have seen here is not justice, but the meticulous attempt to destroy a man's reputation. Photos taken out of context, accounts manipulated by the person who controlled the money, an expert report based on isolated scenes and potentially motivated by something other than the love of truth." He looked at Serena and Gates. "We are not protecting a child here. We are witnessing a greedy wife trying to banish the father from her child's life to keep everything. Elias is not perfect, but he is a good father. He dedicated himself to Chloe. He gave up his career for her. I ask you not to allow such a well-spun intrigue to destroy that bond." His plea was moving, but I knew it depended on the perception, and the other side had evidence. The judge cleared his throat, opened the file, and began. After reviewing the documentation, hearing the testimony, and evaluating the evidence presented, this court finds that the petitioner has presented significant evidence. I felt my chest tighten. My gaze fell to the floor. The photos show a clear neglect of the household. The financial evidence proves an unbalanced use of credit cards in the respondent's name. And above all, the report by Dr. Gates and Mr. Vance's behavior in this courtroom reveal a worrisome emotional instability. I saw Serena smile. Gates straightened up, ready to savor the victory. The judge took a deep breath. Considering the well-being of the minor Chloe, this court rules, stop. A small voice pierced the air. Everyone turned around. In the slightly open door stood Chloe in her school uniform, her small body seeming fragile, but her eyes were clear. She held the old tablet tightly against her chest. "Chloe, what are you doing here? Get out immediately," Serena shouted beside herself, her facade crumbling. "Bailiff, how can a child be allowed in here? This is a disruption of order," Reed protested. But my daughter did not move. She walked step by step down the center aisle, looking neither at me nor her mother. Her gaze was fixed on the judge. "Your Honor," she said, in a trembling but clear voice, "I'm sorry for interrupting." The judge put the gavel aside, somewhat surprised. He saw the pure soul of a child. "It's all right, Princess," he replied. "Why are you here? Who brought you?" "My aunt dropped me off nearby, but I came in alone. I heard my mommy say that my daddy is bad and that he can't take care of me." My heart sank. I thought she was going to repeat all the lies, but Chloe continued, taking a deep breath. "May I show you something my daddy doesn't know about?" "It's the truth." Absolute silence ensued. Serena stood up. "Your Honor, this is insanity. A child's recording cannot be used as evidence. This is an invasion of our privacy," Reed protested. "Or it could be the evidence this court needs to know the truth," Harrison intervened. "Enough, both of you," the judge commanded, banging the gavel. "Mr. Secretary, help the child. Connect that device to the monitors." "No!" Serena screamed, pale as a sheet. "I object. This is a trap. It is not allowed." "Your objection is noted." "Sit down," the judge retorted sternly. The clerk approached Chloe and carefully took the old, cracked tablet. He connected it with a cable to the monitors in the room. After a few seconds, the device's menu appeared. Chloe pointed to a video file. "This one," she said. "Proceed, Princess. Press play," the judge requested. My daughter pressed play. The image moved slightly, as if the device was hidden behind something. I immediately recognized the living room of our house and the large flower pot in the corner, where Chloe often hid when we played. Then two figures appeared, Serena and Dr. Gates. It wasn't the cold Serena of the courtroom, nor the stiff Gates in a suit. Both wore comfortable, relaxed clothes. He was hugging her from behind, kissing her neck. Murmurs broke out in the room, louder than before. My breath was snatched away. The psychologist, the impartial expert witness, was my wife's lover. The betrayal was now public. In the video, Serena's voice was heard. "Are you sure your plan will work out? Elias is so naive. He doesn't ask questions." "He's naive and obedient," Gates replied. "He won't suspect anything. You've already transferred all the money to my account. It's safe. When the judge grants you custody and the house, we'll take off, just as planned." I felt dizzy. That was the money from the joint account that had disappeared. "And Chloe is very attached to him?" Gates asked, with a hint of concern in his voice. "Oh, she's a child. She just needs a new tablet and some fun outings. She'll get used to it. Besides, with the report you created, the judge will think he's crazy. No one will believe him if he explodes," Serena replied, laughing a cold, calculating laugh. "And if Elias's attorney tries to attack me?" Gates asked in the video. "Don't worry," she answered. I planned everything. I'll provoke him until he explodes. I already recorded him crying and yelling. If he makes a scene in court, your report will fit perfectly. His own emotional instability will take custody away from him." Each sentence was a harder blow. But I felt no pain anymore, only cold, pure vengeance. The video ended with the two of them toasting, laughing, as if celebrating a business deal. When the screen went black, no one spoke. The judge had a face flushed with anger. Serena seemed paralyzed, not knowing where to look. Gates was pale as a sheet, glued to the chair. "Miss Serena Vance," the judge said in an icy, thundering voice. "This video was recorded in your living room by your daughter. Do you still intend to claim everything is a misunderstanding?" Serena opened her mouth, but only a thin voice came out. He manipulated me. It was his idea. He forced me," she stammered, pointing at Gates. "Liar," he shouted from the gallery. "You were the one who suggested taking custody away from him. You asked me for the report. You said Elias wouldn't dare to fight. You are a money-hungry—" "Silence, both of you," the judge commanded, banging the gavel. "Your confessions are already on record." Then he looked at Reed, his gaze a judgment in itself. "Attorney Dalton Reed, you presented this evidence and this report as the absolute truth and deliberately provoked the witness to fit a false narrative. The Ethics Committee will handle your licensure, but I tell you in advance that your conduct has been shameful and your career ends here." Reed lowered his head in defeat. The judge took Serena's divorce petition and literally began tearing out the pages, a symbolic act of destroying her lie. The accusation that the respondent neglected the household, false. "The photos were part of a defamation strategy," he said, dropping a page on the floor. "The accusation that he was a spendthrift, false. You yourself admitted in the video to having transferred the money to another account." Another sheet fell to the floor. "The accusation of emotional instability, constructed through a purchased expert report and a provoked scene, false." The last sheet fluttered down. "Your entire complaint is legal garbage based on lies, adultery, and manipulation. This court dismisses the divorce petition filed by Ms. Serena Vance in its entirety," he declared, banging the gavel. He turned to me and Attorney Harrison. "Now it is the victim's turn," he said. "Mr. Elias Vance, this court suggests you file your own divorce petition, if you wish. The evidence speaks for itself." I remained speechless for a few seconds. I looked at Serena, slumped in her chair. "Yes, Your Honor," I finally replied, my voice trembling but firm. "I wish to divorce her on the grounds of adultery and fraud." "The court grants the divorce petition of Mr. Elias Vance on the grounds of adultery and fraud by the wife. Sole custody of the minor, Chloe, is granted to the father," he announced. Justice prevailed. I felt my legs shaking. Chloe smiled from her spot next to the clerk. The judge was not finished. "Furthermore, all assets in the name of Ms. Serena Vance and Dr. Brandon Gates are frozen. An investigation will be opened to trace the money transferred from the joint account. The house they lived in transfers to the sole ownership of Mr. Elias and Chloe. And in restitution, the court orders a substantial compensatory payment from Ms. Vance to Mr. Vance, as his career was terminated due to her demand. And finally," he added in a loud voice, "based on the evidence from the video and the confessions just heard, I order the immediate arrest of Ms. Serena Vance and Dr. Brandon Gates for conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, and manipulation of evidence before this court. Remove them." The bailiffs placed handcuffs on Serena. The woman who had entered that morning, elegant and haughty, walked out in handcuffs with a lost look, her eyes full of despair. Gates was also arrested, his face distorted, without a trace of his professional demeanor. I still stood paralyzed, trying to grasp what had just happened. Attorney Harrison looked at me with a wide smile. "We won, Elias. We won. Your daughter is a hero. But the true victory was only a few steps away from me. Chloe ran into the middle of the room. I struggled to stand up and knelt down to hug her. I pressed her against me with all my strength, as if afraid she would disappear. I cried, but for the first time in a long time, they were tears of relief, of liberation. She wrapped her little arms around my neck. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, Princess. Thank you for saving me." "Thank you for your courage, Bar," I replied with a broken voice. The case spread like wildfire in the news. The media reported on the stay-at-home dad saved by his daughter's broken tablet. For weeks, our cases were on the front pages. The greedy wife, the corrupt psychologist, the unscrupulous lawyer, and the 7-year-old girl who revealed the whole truth. The first few months after the verdict were confusing. Attorney Harrison took care of almost everything. By order of the judge, Serena and Gates's assets were frozen. The investigation showed that Serena had transferred almost $1 million to the psychologist's account in the last year. That money was recovered and deposited into a new account in my name. The large, cold house, full of bad memories, officially passed into the possession of Chloe and me, but I couldn't stand being there anymore. Every room had a shadow of Serena. Every corner reminded me of a humiliation. Following Harrison's advice and Trevor's encouragement to start fresh, I decided to sell it. The money, along with the recovered amount and the compensation, was enough to start a truly new life. This was no longer vengeance. It was rebirth. The punishment for the guilty was swift. With that evidence, the criminal court had no doubts. Serena was sentenced to several years in prison for fraud, theft, and perjury. Dr. Gates also received a long prison sentence, and the psychology board permanently revoked his license. Attorney Dalton Reed was disbarred and faced charges of his own. Suddenly, the weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long began to disappear. 3 months after the verdict, no one who saw us at the park we visited every afternoon would have guessed what we had been through. Chloe ran happily among the swings, and I watched her from a bench with a peace I thought I would never feel again. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and freedom. We had moved into a vast 3-bedroom apartment that was bright and cozy. The walls were covered with photos of us. Chloe at school, Chloe with chocolate cake, Chloe holding my hand. The house smelled of home-cooked food, spices, and love. I had turned my talent into a small prepared meal business, just as Trevor had suggested. My first big order had been the gala opening of his new studio. People in the neighborhood started ordering stews, desserts, and complete menus from me. What Serena had always despised, my way of cooking and caring, had become our livelihood. I worked hard and was tired at the end of the day, but it was a happy fatigue. I was no longer dependent on anyone, no longer needed to ask anyone for permission. My true worth wasn't in a suit, but in the hands that nourished Chloe and built her a home. One afternoon, Chloe ran up to the bench where I was sitting. Her hands were full of dirt, and she had a huge smile. "Daddy, look, the flowers are about to come out," she said, showing me a few small shoots she had just planted. I smiled and ruffled her hair. "Of course. If you take care of them, everything grows beautifully," I replied. We sat in silence for a while, watching the other children play. There was one question that had been on my tongue for weeks, since the day of the verdict. "Chloe," I finally said, "may I ask you something?" "Yes, Daddy," she answered, looking at me with her pure, honest, childlike love. "The video. Why did you record it? Why did you turn on that old tablet that night?" She thought for a moment. "Because I didn't like Uncle Brandon," she answered simply. "He pretended to be nice. He smiled when you were there. But when you were gone, he said ugly things about you to Mommy. And at the mall, when you went to the restroom, I heard him say, "You were taking too long, that you were lazy." And at the park, too, she continued, frowning. "He saw you, but he told Mommy you weren't looking at me and that I was alone. And that wasn't true. You were looking at me." I knew they were telling lies. I was surprised at how observant she had been. She had been my silent witness. "And the night of the video," I asked, "why did you record that exact thing?" "Because I wanted to show you my drawing, and I went downstairs," she explained. "I saw Mommy come in with him and hug him. I got scared and hid behind the flower pot. I remembered you told me that when someone does bad things, you have to have proof. I had the old tablet with me, and I recorded it. I knew they were planning bad things." I felt a lump in my throat. I couldn't remember when I had said something like that, but she had. It was a deeply ingrained value I had taught her. "And why didn't you show it to me earlier?" I asked gently. "Because I heard Mommy tell Brandon that you would never find out. She said you were dumb," Chloe answered, looking down. "I thought it was too big of a secret. I was afraid she would get angry if you knew. I was afraid you would get sad again." I hugged her tenderly. "And why did you show it in court then?" She took a deep breath, and her eyes welled up. "Because the judge was going to take you away from me," she said. "And Mommy and Uncle Brandon said you were bad, but that's not true. I didn't want to leave and leave you alone. I didn't want them to think you were the bad guy. I had to show the judge that they were the ones who lied. You taught me to fight for the truth, Daddy." I couldn't hold back anymore. I hugged her tightly, feeling my tears flow again, but this time they were tears of pride. For months, I'd been told I was a failure as a husband and a father, and I had doubted myself. But the greatest proof that I had not failed stood before me. I had raised an honest, brave girl with a sense of justice greater than her fear. A girl capable of facing a room full of adults to speak the truth. "Thank you, Princess," I whispered with a broken voice. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for not doubting me." "I love you, Daddy," she repeated, hugging my neck. "I love you too, Chloe. More than anything," I replied. In that moment, I understood everything. I had never been a failed father. I had simply, without realizing it, been guiding the growth of a little hero. And now both of us, finally, had the chance to start over in a new life filled with honesty, love, and the scent of chocolate cake. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.